Hi all, so welcome to this channel, and in this video session I'll discuss instead of triggers. So basically these triggers are applicable for SQL views and they are not applicable for tables. So uh, as we all know that we can join multiple tables and create a view over them, and one more point here, that is we cannot insert, update or delete into those underlying tables using that view. So there is an alternative for that, that is we can create an instead of trigger. So what that does is that ignores the insert, update or delete statement which we run through the SQL sessions, and and that basically insert, update or delete in those underlying tables using that trigger. So that is called as instead of trigger. So that is not a before, not an after trigger, that's an instead of trigger. So instead of inserting, updating or deleting from the view, it does that in those underlying table, because that view is finally depends upon that those tables. So let me have some important points in front of you all. That is, this view is only allowed on SQL views only, that is created using the create view statement, and these are not allowed for the logical files which are created using the DDS LF. So only one instead of trigger allowed for each trigger event. So there are multiple trigger event like insert, update or delete, and for every trigger event there is only one trigger allowed on that view. So uh, now we can say that we can have three views per view. So in case of view we can have only three views, and every view is different, means every view is depend upon the different separate events like insert, delete or update. Now trigger action cannot use when clause. So in this case we cannot use the when clause which we can use in the normal trigger programs. So whenever we are applying trigger on SQL views, that is using the instead of triggers, we cannot use the when clause, and we cannot use the for each statement. So this is applicable for each row. Where more DB2 row and more DB2 SQL is allowed, we can use that at our end, but more for each row is allowed here, for each statement is not allowed. So let me jump towards the demo on the IBM IS side. So let's see. As you can see, I have created this, I have written this source for the PF. File name is this, and this is based upon the student table. So basically this has student information, that is to ID, class, status and fees. So let's compile this. So the object gets created successfully for this, and again this table for the student information. So stu_id is common in both the tables, stu_name, date of birth and address. So now we'll join these two tables to combine all the fields in a view, so that we can access the information in these two tables from a single view. So let's compile this as well. So the object gets created. Now let's see the view. So we have created this view using the create view statement, and view name is this as, and we are selecting the fields from file this, which whose alias name is a. So a dot is to id, and a dot is to class, is to status, is to fees, and joining these two files trgpf9a, which is alias name, whose alias name is b. So b dot this, b dot this and b dot this. So basically I am selecting all the fields from these two tables by joining them on student id. So a dot student id equals to b dot student id. So all the similar records are there in the view, and this is the default join. So default join is inner join, as I would say. So let's create a view as well. So use the run SQL STM command to create view from the source member. So this is the SQL source file, trigger source file. This one is the library and this one is the member. So here commit control is set to none. Now check this. So we can see view gets created over those two files, and if we do the DSPFD over that, we will see that this view gets created using this statement. So this is based upon these two PFs. And let me number of triggers for now is 0. So let's try to insert some record. So if I am inserting any record into the view which is based upon table trgpf9 and trgpf9a, so this gives me an error that view index or table, that is this view named this in library this is read only. Since this is based upon multiple files, we cannot update this, neither insert any record or nor delete any record because using that view, because this is in read only. So to overcome this thing, we have a solution, that is the instead of trigger. So instead of trigger uses ignores these statements, and instead of performing the insert operations in the tables, and so in that case we are able to insert, delete or update records using the view, join view. So let's see the trigger which is created over this. So create or replace trigger. So create or replace command is used to create the trigger. Trigger name is instead of trigger demo. So this one is the name of the trigger, and if this name trigger is already created, that would be replaced because we are using create or replace command. So here you can see neither before neither after is used. Here we are using instead of, insert or update or delete. So now you can see I am creating a single trigger program over this, over all the uh, events, trigger event, that is insert, update or delete on this view. So you can see this is a view, this is not a table. So instead of trigger is always defined on the SQL view, and here you can see I'm referencing new row as new, old row as old for each row. So we cannot use for each statement, so we need to use for each row. We can either use mode DB2 row or mode DB2 SQL. I'll surely create one video. I have a plan for that which tells you a practical difference between DB2 row and DB2 SQL. So let's leave this here. I'll create a separate topic so that you must understand why we are using mode DB2 row and why we are using mode DB2 SQL and what is the difference. Now program name trigger 13. So we are giving it a program name, that is the object name trigger 13, which must be unique always. Here you can see I am using the begin atomic. So this is the begin of the trigger, begin, that is the body of the trigger. So I'm using atomic with that, so that if any of the insert or delete or update, any of the SQL statement is passed and any of one of them or many or all of them failed, so that the changes would be rolled back, so that no changes would in effect. Means if there are two statements, one passed and one failed, so one that is passed would be rolled back. So if either every statement gets passed, then only this thing would be complete. So begin atomic serves the purpose for that. So in case if we have PFs, we are using commitment control, then in that case these things are come into picture. So here you can see I'm using predicate for checking whether it is inserting, whether deleting or updating. So for inserting, if inserting then end if. So within that we will be inserting into the table. So basically we are inserting into the view, and that view is depends or is based on this and this file. So I'm inserting on this. So we are not insert on view, we are going to insert on the tables. So stu id, stu class, stu status, stu fees. And as we all know that in case of inserting we always have the new row available. So new stu id, new dot stu class, new dot stu status, and new dot stu fees. It's the same way inserting in this file, and this is the end of if. Now if updating, what we are doing, then again we are checking if new dot stu id. So we have both no new and old row for update. So we are checking if new dot stu id is not equal to old dot stu id, means the user tries to update the value of the student id as well. So in that case we will throw an error, we will signal an error, which is actually we are not uh, allowing user to change this to id. So what we'll do, we'll signal SQL state as error, which is a customized SQL state as per me. You can keep it at any text or any number as per yourself. Set message text as stu id cannot be updated, and end if. So this would the trigger would end here, and it would send a signal to the, or a message to the user that stu id cannot be updated. So user don't have to update that. Else if, or you can see, if this is not equals to old id, means we are not updating the student id, then it won't go inside this and won't throw any signal or error to the user, and it would rather update the tables field. So update trgpf9 and update trgpf9 is set all the fields with the new one, and where student id equals to old dot stu id. So because we are having the old dot stu id, so we must update with that. So update this with the old dot stu id. So we are updating the new row for those old IDs. And if deleting, what we are doing, if deleting, then and if delete from trgpf9 where stu id equals to old dot stu id. So here we are using old because in delete we always have the old row, we don't have the new row because we are not inserting anything. So we are deleting from these two tables. So now you can see whenever we are inserting, updating, or deleting row record to from that view, that won't gonna happen. And instead of, as I would say, this word instead of means that won't happen, but instead of that this would happen, means those two underlying tables on which that view is created would get inserted, updated, or deleted with the record which we are trying to insert in the SQL view. So this is all in this trigger program. We need to compile this. Just compile this trigger 13, or what we can do is we can compile it with star source. Now just see. So you can see the trigger program gets created successfully. Now just go to STSQL. Now one more important thing which I would tell you, that there is a basic requirement to run this trigger SQL statement, that is the user profile must have a star all obj or star sec admin special authority, which is not available for our user profile. So we are not able to do this demo here, but we as I am doing the demo here, so I can show you that error which you will be facing if you don't have that authority. And if you have that authority, you will be able to successfully run this. Not authorized to object this in this library type star file. So if I'm so earlier when I was running this insert statement, and I don't have that trigger. Instead of trigger on that file, I was seeing this error, that is, this is read only, we are not allowed to do that. But this time I'm seeing any other error, that is not authorized to objects, means it bypasses that insert into the view, and it went for trying to run that trigger, but it's not allowed just because of the authority issue. Just check, just do F1 here, SQL 0551 not authorized to object this, type file this, obtain the required authority from either the security officer, the object owner, or a user that is authorized to this function. So if we have authority as star all obj star sec admin, we are able to execute this. So if anyone of you who are watching this video have authority, then they can try this at their end, and this is of course possible. So that's all in this video. Thank you and have a nice time.